He's a chartered accountant, CFA charter holder USA, and MSc in accounting and finance from London School of Economics. He has over 2 decades of experience as research analyst and fund management. Previously, he worked with LIC MF and Canara MF. The topic of the day is being on the right side of the fence. Let's hear from him what is the right side of the fence.
Thinking about presenting at... So that's better? Yeah, so when I was discussing about what to present, I was thinking about, finance is one of the oldest industries in the world. It has been there since ages, and financial principles hardly change. Many times we are given illusion that this time is different, but I just wanted to give 2 stories as such, and discuss about some of the classical thoughts about what finance is and what are the important things in finance to think about. So one of my favorite book is actually The Richest Man in Babylon. Many people would have read it. Very simple book. There are 7 rules of investing, and the book talks about what are the things to look at, how to diversify, what are the things to look at, how to invest more, spend less, how to find new sources of income over a period of time. So I'm planning to give 2 stories, and we'll just discuss 2 stories, and from that we'll try to understand how current situation about markets is and what we should be thinking about. So I'm just going to talk about animals. One first is honeybees. So you know how honeybees collect different types of foods, honeys, and how they communicate. So as human being we can communicate, we can talk to each other, but honeybees, they cannot communicate directly. They communicate through something called as waggle dance. So when one honeybee finds a source of honey, it comes to honeycomb, it does a waggle of tail and feathers to tell that where the honey is. So other honeybee in the honeycomb, they understand that and they try to go in that direction. So for example, honeybee will come and mention that honey is there 5 kilometers on the west, something like that. That's what they will do, and that is called as waggle dance. And what happens is that other honeybees, logically, as we think in finance, finance actually goes from one side to other, right? In finance, some people say it's actually rational. Finance is a rational game. Whereas some people say there is a behavioral finance. People are not rational. People react to sentiments. People react very differently. In expensive market, people want to chase returns. In current market, people want small caps, despite we telling them that, okay, small caps are risky, let's diversify. So that is how situation changes. So 80% of the honeybees follow that path. They go to that path which is being told. Whereas 10 to 20% of the honeybees, they don't listen. They go anywhere they want. What it leads to? It leads to the honeycomb in total finding new areas of honey. So these 10 to 20% of the honeybees which are there, they go into different direction. So for example, if honeybee tells 5% to the west, 5 kilometers to the west, they go 2 kilometers to the north. But they end up finding new source of water. They find new source of maybe flower bed, and leads to a new source of food and nutrients for that overall honeycomb. And that's how that overall ecosystem leads to diversification. They get different nutrients, they get different sources of food. If one food source stops, tomorrow they have some other food source to rely on. And that provides more robustness to overall honeycomb. And that is what the idea of diversification we also have to think in our investment journey. So honeybees have been looking at it from their journey. And as an investor, we also have to think of diversification and thus getting more sources of honey in our overall investment portfolios or in our clients' portfolios. So just like bees, diversify your investments through assets, market sectors, geographic regions as such. So let's look at what has been the past, what has been the learning. So in past, this is 20-year data. Unfortunately, data is as on December end of 23, because RBI gives the most reliable data on the real estate sector, and that data is as on December end. That's why I have put this chart as on December end. So for last 20 years, if you look at rolling 5-year CAGR, which is the second part of chart, the 5 years period, there is almost 15% returns made in the market, 15% returns made in the gold. Other asset classes are at 7%, 6% and 3%. right? So, but that is the beauty, that when you diversify, you have to diversify in different asset classes. We have recently talked about multi-asset as a category, and where there are different sources of assets. Some sources are like, some of the assets are efficiency assets like equities and debt, and some of our scarcity assets, which are gold and precious metals. And since they are different asset classes, their correlation is also very less. And diversification exactly is that point, that we have to diversify over different asset classes or regions to get uncorrelated returns over a period of time. If your correlation is very high, that also makes the diversification futile. That is the idea I wanted to discuss through this. So ensure diversification in your funds. That is the first message I wanted to discuss. So where are we in the current market construct? So today's market, so I was just here a few minutes back, and it was good. I am very happy to hear to the jovial discussion, jovial presentations which we are having. And there is a different moods which are there in the market. So 1 month back, the market mood was completely different, and today market sentiment is completely different. So today, if you try to tell investor that okay, small caps are risky, they may agree today. 1 month ago, that was not even the chance that they will agree. So currently, as of last month, we were in the modest zone. We were away from the fundamental zone, which is a fair zone in the markets. And today, after 8% correction also, we are still in the modest zone. So point is, markets are ahead of fundamentals, even currently when we are looking at it. So if I look at the construct of the market, how these returns have been made in past. So let's look at 1 year period. When this is the Sensex data since inception. If you look at rolling 1 year, this is how data looks like. The maximum return, the minimum return is like minus 56. Average returns are 18.6. Highest positive is 73. Highest and negative returns are 26.7. And risk to return ratio is 0.58. If you look at rolling period, over period of time, the data gravitates, particularly the average return, gravitates toward 14.9%. That is the average return, at least Sensex has made in the 10-year rolling period. That is how the data indicates. And as one previous participant also indicated, that what is the investment goal, that needs to be reassessed from our perspective, from investors' perspective, when we are discussing this with investors. This is a very interesting chart which I wanted to talk about. On the Nifty, it is very important to understand how these returns are coming from. As market is earnings into PE ratio, we try to look at as a professionals from this angle, that how much of the Nifty's returns are coming from earning delivery, that companies themselves are doing good and that's why market is going up, and how much is because of flows, which is indirectly PE re-rating. So we have been discussing for last 1.5 years that domestic inflows are very strong, FII's inflows are very strong. FII recently started taking out money and market corrected because of that. Last 1 month, FIIs have collectively taken away $11 billion of money from India. All these data points are getting captured in this chart. When we are looking at 1 year, if I look at 31% returns as of September end, 16% of that is contributed from EPS change and 14% is coming from PE re-rating. And that is what we have to assess, that from India's perspective, where we are the starting point, how we should be thinking about markets overall. If market is more driven by only PE rating, then we have to question ourselves that where are we in the overall cycle and what should be our action plan for tackling that kind of market. This is another chart which long term indicates that out of all 44 years of Sensex, 34 years have been positive. This is just a historical data point. It's nothing indicates about the future return potential or any potential, or there is no projection as such. This is just the historical data, that where are we sitting? What is the starting point at which we are sitting? So we are sitting somewhere in 30 to 60% bucket, because our 1 year returns we have been made is 30% return, and that's why we are in this bucket as of now. So that also one has to think through from going ahead. Historically, at least that has led to some kind of subdued returns in future, but that one data point which one need to just remember. So let's go to another story. Why I talked about, I'll come to the conclusion at the part of this study. So let's go to another story. Let's go to drive from Chennai to Bangalore. When we are traveling by a car, we'll typically try to assess that, okay, let's average speed is 60 kilometers per hour. And that's why it should take around 6 hours safe and sound we should reach to Bangalore from Chennai. That is the thought process, that is how we will plan. But suppose if somebody says, no, I will drive at 120 kilometers, right? One will definitely reach in 3 hours. But at what risk? What risk which you are taking? And similarly, in financial journey, also we have to think of the same thing. So financial journey is ultimately this equation, 1 plus r raised to n. This is a formula for compounding, which I am sure everybody is aware, in which there are only two variables. What is the return which you are planning to make over a period of time, which I told you historically market has given 14.9% return, and currently the starting point is slightly on the higher side. So historically, when higher returns are made, they have over a period of time averaged out. And that is the area which we need to keep in mind. So in such kind of investment journey, from the safety side, what is the best alternative? The best alternative is to budget for 6 hours of journey at 60 kilometers of speed. So in your calculations, whenever you are discussing with investors, I would urge that you can have moderate expectations, elongate the number of years. So what is in our control? We elongated 6 hours. We driving at 60 kilometers per hour, that is what is in our hand to have reduced or acceptable risk from our perspective. Whether in 3 hours at 120 kilometers possible? Yes, it's possible. Somebody may have achieved it also. But is that a normal course of journey? I would suggest that better we plan for reasonable return and elongate the hour. So if you look at, if I do 10,000 rupees of SIP for 5 years, right? That is like 60 installment, 6 lakh rupees of investment I am doing. At 12% CAGR, if I look at, I get approximately 8 lakh rupees. That is the overall calculation historically that has happened at 12%. If I elongate this, instead of 12, if I do at 24%, I double the rate of return expectations. That means I will have to take more risk. I will have to go into asset classes or areas where I am not comfortable with. I will have to take more risk. That means also more drawdown risk that I have to accept. In that case, that 10,000 rupees of SIP for 5 years at 24% will give you 11.6 lakh rupees approximately. But if you elongate the time frame, instead of 5 years, if you talk about 10 years, then you get 23 lakh rupees. So that is the beauty of compounding, which we have been discussing, which we know. I'm just putting it in the fact that when you control the variables which are in our control. See, in our control, variable is n, and our control is 10,000 rupees of SIP. Instead of 10,000, you start doing 12,000, 15,000. Instead of n, which was 3 hours, instead of 3 years, you elongate to 5 years. And those are the data points which one can think of when they are looking at investment journey and get the safe and sound, achieve the safe and sound investment objectives. So that is what I wanted to talk about from these two areas, from investment perspective. That one message I wanted to give was on the diversification and experimentation. So these honeybees also experimented with new areas. And similarly, I'm sure a lot of you are experimenting with different thematic funds. I saw data about thematic funds, and sir presented very beautifully that everybody is doing thematic funds and nobody is doing any other, is it? So one has to also experiment with these themes, because we believe that last 10 years of India and next 10 years of India will be very different. Next 10 years of India will have very different themes, different products, or different themes will play out over a period of time. And that's why one has to start experimenting with these themes as well. So that is the message I wanted to give on this, and thank you so much for opportunities. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to discuss. This one? Oh, sorry. So this was the last slide? One? Yeah? No. So this was the historical returns of Indian equities. What we did is that we tried to assess how so this is a normal curve, right? Ultimately, you are getting some extremes. At some data points, some years are very extremes. you are, I'm sure you would have seen different cycles. And at those extremities, see, market is driven by three things. Market is driven by fundamentals, market is driven by flows, and market is driven by sentiments. So ultimately, these three things matter quite a lot for us as investors, as professionals in the game. So fundamentals, we all are aware that India is doing very good fundamentally. What we are trying to assess is that when market is in the zone which is away from fundamentals, then what matters is flows and sentiments. And when such extremities happen, market sentiment as well as individual investors' greed and fear controls the overall returns, what is happening in the market. So the data point which I wanted to tell only about, so there has been extreme years of negative returns, but they were achieved, if you look at historically, after very good returns. So 47, see, continuous good returns, that has led to this. Even these years, which are extremely good years, so 81% return has been there after achieving that negative 52% kind of return. But overall, ultimately on 20-year CAGR basis, 14.9% is the reality. And what is in our control is to control our own emotions, our own time frame of what kind of investment goals, investment objective we wanted to achieve. And that's why let's control N, which is number of years, rather than R. Rather than timing the market, we should control the N which is there. That is the message which I wanted to give through this slide. This one? So this is how we look at how breakup of gains of whatever index has returned into how much is earning delivery and how much is PE re-rating. That is how we try to decipher.
The last 5 years, we are making 18% excess over the fund.
Yes. So PE has re-rated by 18% in last 5 years period of time. Overall EPS delivery has been 90%. So this is multiplicative. That's why it's not addition. You have to multiply 1 plus 90 into 1 plus 18. So that is how you get 125% returns.
So the re-rating part is 18%.
Re-rating part is 18%, yes. Over last 5 years. So why I am telling you about this is that we always discuss about 1 year forward EPS is higher than average. Why we discuss or how to come to some conclusion from that, and that's why I highlighted about these PE re-rating, D-ratings. We have to look and also link it with the overall ROE, return on equity, how it is moving up. Currently return on equity is higher than average, that's why PE is also higher than average as of now. However, sentiment change as well as flows will have negative implication, which we have to be aware that how much of froth. So whenever somebody says market has gone ahead of fundamentals, how much is this is the idea which you can understand from this equation, that okay, how much is this?
Sir, when
Sure.
as a fund manager, you have this data. Suddenly now you give your earnings not as per the market expectation.
Earnings is not as per market expectations.
As per the earnings is not as per the market expectation, so the correction is happening. I'm not talking about even the correction. That's what you do. So for example, you take say guidance. So you expect some earnings growth, but it has not happened in September. Based on this historical data, based on the current data, how?
So, see, market is very reactive. So, particularly when the question was when a lot of money has been made, when flows are dictating it, market becomes very reactive. That's why you would have seen in last 6 months, you would have always heard that cycles have become smaller. Why cycles become smaller? Why this happens? So that is the question which we are asking as a fund managers to ourselves. Why cycle becomes smaller is mainly because of this reason, that market have made good money, returns have been phenomenal, everybody wants to protect their money. So at a chance that if there is earning derating or market or feels that earnings will be lower than market expectation, it will lead to sharp derating. And that's what has happened typically in markets. Our earnings don't decline that much, but PE re-rating or de-rating has significant bearing on the overall markets. Yes, sir. So market has given 47% return, whereas earnings have grown by 51%. So this is actually, if you look at last 3 years, is also the COVID base. That's why this is happening. So, correct. So market has given 47% return. So 47 is 1 plus 51 into 1 minus 3% का multiplication. So it's a multiplicative. If you multiply this column and that column, you should get this column. Because market returns are ultimately earnings into P ratio. So that is how the calculation is. Great. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sanjay, for reminding us to set the expectations right. Now we request Mrs. Devi to give honor to Mr. Sanjay.